So really and truly, this is going from like 1970 to about 1991, more or less. Now I'm not counting in Vietnam here because we've already discussed that. Now, first thing is we have a new leader in the 70s. Khrushchev is ousted. Well, really in the 60s. Khrushchev is ousted after the Cuban Missile Crisis, and nobody wanted that to go on. And so we get a guy by the name of Leonid Brezhnev. And Brezhnev issues what is called the Brezhnev Doctrine. Easy way to remember this, if you remember Truman said, "I'll give any money to any country resisting communism." And so Brezhnev essentially says the exact same, but the reverse. He said, "I'm going to give," or the USSR rather, will give money to any country resisting democracy. And so that was his doctrine. And he also said, if there's any democratic protests to that matter, he would come in and try to squash them. Well, we have to have a case in point. So as I said, it's the opposite of Truman. Now, the case was in Czechoslovakia, in Prague, which is the capital of the Czech Republic now. It used to be Czechoslovakia. You see they have the signs up there. It says, SSSR, go home, different things of that matter, and it was called Prague Spring. It was a revolution to get rid of communism and to essentially come back with things. Now, Brezhnev leads a kind of coalition of 5 Warsaw Pact countries to go and invade Czechoslovakia and get them to listen. And so here you have kind of the workers' union protest picture of that, and here you go with the Soviet Union rolling in with tanks. It was put down very violently, and actually the leader of the demonstration of the Prague Spring, Alexander Dubček, was later found and put on trial. And so things are not looking good for the Soviet Union. Also in '68, we get a new president. We get Richard Nixon, who we talked about the other day. And whereas Nixon's faults were domestic with Watergate, foreign, he wasn't a bad president. He knew what was going on. And he introduced a new policy towards the Soviet Union that was called détente. Now, détente is a French word meaning relaxation. And so, as we talked about before, with Eisenhower and peaceful coexistence, this is the second Cold War thaw. Things start to look a little better, and we have stuff like these cartoons come out, right? The Odd Couple, the Soviet bear, and the American eagle, and a really, really ugly kind of bird-bear child. But this is détente. It's a relaxing of tensions, and things seem to be going pretty good. Now, along those same lines, we have a guy named Willy Brandt. Now, Willy Brandt is the Chancellor of West Germany. Remember, the West is the democratic side. And he introduced something called Ostpolitik, or Realpolitik. And the whole idea behind Realpolitik was to put politics aside, more or less, and just cooperate with each other. And so he is actually in West Germany, but he is really trading with these Eastern Bloc countries, which technically was a no-no, but it was good when the wall fell, that somebody on the West kind of understood the East and helped to bring these things about. Now, he will resign in '74 because one of his top aides was a member of the Stasi, which was the kind of the equivalent of the Soviet Gestapo, and so that's going to be something that hangs over his head, but he does do that. So here's the idea of politic, right? You say you want a revolution, there you go. So everything seems to be going good between the United States and Soviet Union. So it seemed like it was getting a little better. Now, as we said before, Nixon will resign. Before he does resign, however, he will sign what is called the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. And before I go into this, you think an anti-ballistic missile would be a good thing because that can shoot down a ballistic missile. But the general mentality was if we have more ballistic missiles, we're going to need bigger ones to shoot them down, and we're going to need bigger ones to get through. And so that kind of takes down the firepower a little bit. And so that was a pretty good step in the right direction. Now, when Nixon gets caught up in Watergate, Gerald Ford becomes our next president. Now, Ford was known more or less for falling down. Chevy Chase used to imitate him quite frequently. And when we get to the domestic, I'll show you some of those videos. It's funny. So Gerald Ford is president after Nixon. He just continues to taunt, really. Now here we have a big meeting here in Helsinki, which is in Finland, and it's called the Helsinki Accords. Now you've heard of photobombing, but this guy's here named Sam, and this is Dave. This is the first true photobomb. These two people are paper pushers. They just brought paper up to be signed, and they stayed for a photo opportunity. Ford was not too happy about it, but they were fired once they came back to the United States. But the Helsinki Accords is a pretty good step in the right direction. What happens is it's a bargaining trip. All right, we agree we're not going to try to democratize or get rid of communism in any Eastern Bloc countries, which are the satellites. They in turn agree to recognize human rights. And so that's a pretty good thing, right? Pretty good trade-off. Now we come back, we'll see how the Soviets kind of go away from that, and then we're moving into a few little more interesting things with Carter. Okay?